So, a very warm welcome to everyone on this session in which we shall be discussing about Bitcoin, blockchain, and cryptocurrencies. I am Dr. Prateek Bedi, and I have done my PhD in finance from Department of Finance and Business Economics, University of Delhi. And I have also got an opportunity to write a paper on Bitcoin, which got published in a journal called Research in International Business and Finance back in 2019. So today I'll be sharing the specifics of how do Bitcoin, the blockchain technology, and cryptocurrencies work. So without much ado, let's begin with the proceedings. And this shall be the broad agenda for this session. I'll just give you a brief background to put things in perspective and give you an idea as to why are we discussing the evolution of Bitcoin, the advent of cryptocurrencies, and the ongoing development of applications based on blockchain technology. We'll be then discussing what does blockchain do, how does it work, what does it mean, and what is so special about blockchain that makes it so unique. And then we'll be talking about evolution of money. We'll be discussing uh, the meaning, significance, and the journey of money. We'll be then focusing on Bitcoin. What does Bitcoin mean and why is it so relevant in today's times? And then we'll be discussing about cryptocurrencies in general, just a brief overview. And finally, we'll have a look at some recent trends and future directions with regard to cryptocurrencies in general and blockchain technology in particular. Okay, so first of all, meet the showstopper which has garnered attention from all corners of the world, whether economists, whether central banks, whether investors, whether computer science enthusiasts. Almost everyone is today talking about Bitcoin. It is all over the place. And in fact, this has been the case since 2017, when Bitcoin started its unprecedented rally and reached a peak of close to 20,000 US dollars in December 2017. And since then, in fact, Bitcoin has literally had a roller coaster ride. So it is all over the place. And that is why it becomes imperative for us to understand its underlying dynamics. And before we do that, let's see what some of the most influential minds in the space of economics, finance, cryptography, business have to say about Bitcoin. So Eric Schmidt, the executive chairman and of Alphabet and former CEO of Google, he says Bitcoin is a remarkable cryptographic achievement. The ability to create something which is not duplicable in the digital world has enormous value. So he seems to be very positive regarding Bitcoin. Then let's have uh, perhaps the most successful investor of all times, Warren Buffett, CEO and chairman Berkshire Hathaway, and he says it is a mirage. Bitcoin is a mirage. The idea that it has some intrinsic value is just a joke. So he seems to be poles apart regarding his views on Bitcoin compared to Eric Schmidt. Then Peter Thiel, co-founder of PayPal, says, I do think Bitcoin is the first encrypted money that has the potential to do something like change the world. Again, he seems to be now speaking in line with Eric Schmidt, and he seems to be very, very optimistic regarding the future of Bitcoin. And finally, let's have a look at what Jamie Dimon has to say about Bitcoin. And Jamie Dimon is the chairman and CEO of JP Morgan Chase, and he says Bitcoin is fraud. It is just not a real thing. Eventually, it will be closed. So he thinks that Bitcoin is a scam and it has no future. And in fact, it will be wiped out very soon from the economic system. So now, four people and four rather very influential, very wise people, very experienced in their own fields, and such contrasting views. So this contrast in opinions that people have about Bitcoin makes it so very interesting to study, read, and understand how Bitcoin works, what it is, and why is it so special. And this is what we are going to do as part of this session. And let's have a look at the single most important reason as to why Bitcoin has garnered so much attention. And this, my dear friends, is the price timeline, price graph of Bitcoin since its inception till today, that is September 2021. So it all started back in 2009, and in fact, the first Bitcoin exchange came up in March 2010. And at that time, there was an exchange called Mt. Gox, which used to be one of the largest exchanges facilitating trading of Bitcoin. And this exchange was hacked in 2011. Then we had companies which were accepting, or rather, which were starting to accept Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. And WordPress was one of those major names which initially started accepting Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. April 2013, Bitcoin for the first time crossed $100 mark. And soon after, in November 2013, it also crossed the $1,000 mark. And then slowly and gradually, scams also came to the fore, frauds were taking place, thefts were taking place. Like I just told you, in June 2011, the entire exchange was hacked. And United States now started receiving complaints against Bitcoin. And in fact, earlier in February 2014, Mt. Gox was shut. The exchange which got hacked in June 2011 got shut in February 2014, 3 years later after it got hacked. And this was a major setback to Bitcoin, not just as a medium of exchange, as a currency, but also as an investment alternative. Then we had BitLicense, which came into effect in August 2015. Then there was the first journal, the first dedicated journal called Ledger, based on research regarding blockchain technology. And it started in December 2016. Then in April 2017, Japan actually announced Bitcoin to be legal for all sorts of investment purposes. So this was a first major development wherein a developed economy explicitly legalized Bitcoin for investment purposes. Then in December 2017, Bitcoin futures were launched in USA. This was again a very major development because this marked the entry of organized financial institutions into Bitcoin's trading. And then in February 2019, Bitcoin went below $3,500. So from a high of close to $20,000 in December 2017, it went down to a low of less than $3,500. And then happened COVID-19 in March 2020, when the lockdowns were happening across the world, including India. Somehow the trading volumes in Bitcoin started increasing rapidly. And since then, there has been no looking back. So March 2020 and till September, I'm sorry, this should be September. So September 2021, within a span of 1.5 years, Bitcoin has crossed 60,000 US dollar mark, but only to fall once again in May 2021, and then again to rise soon after. So this tells us that Bitcoin has a lot of volatility. Its value has actually been oscillating at the extreme levels throughout its journey so far. So from September 24, 2021, if we look 2 years back, Bitcoin has given a simple discrete return of 453%. And 1 year back, if we look, it has given a simple discrete return of 315%. So Bitcoin, at least as an investment, has performed rather well and has in fact left behind almost all other asset classes in the recent past, and that is why it has become a favorite of people who want to make a quick buck. So Bitcoin for investors has generated a lot of curiosity, a lot of interest, but at the same time now, due to its ever increasing popularity, it has now also been a center of attention for banks and financial institutions, and very specifically the central banks across the world. So this is just an overview of why Bitcoin has become rather more popular in the recent past, and taking cues from this timeline of Bitcoin, we'll move forward now and discuss about a concept called centralization. So what does centralization imply in general? So centralization is basically a setup in which the decision-making powers are concentrated in a few hands, and that too at the apex level of an organization or a system. Now, when I say organization, it could be a company, it could be a partnership, it could be an NGO. And when I say system, it could be the economic system, it could be the financial system. So the idea of centralization remains the same, that the decision-making powers are concentrated within a few hands. Let's understand this with the help of some examples. So all of these documents which you see right now on your screen, the driving license, the property sale deed, and fiat currency. So this is a 2000 rupee note issued by the RBI as one of the fiat currency instruments in India. So now the question is, who issues, verifies, and maintains a record of all of these documents? So let's say for driving license, it is usually the State Transport Authority in India. They maintain a record of all the license holders, including their personal information, including the validity of their driving license. So for driving licenses, this record is maintained by the respective state transport authorities in India. When I talk about property sale deed, now again, different state authorities maintain a record of who owns what part of the land in a state. And if I talk about fiat currency, it is usually the central banks. So in India's case, it is RBI, which maintains a record of all the currency notes, all the coins it has issued in the past, the value for the same. And in fact, there is a unique number which is attached to each and every note in order to identify whether it is genuine or it is fake, right? So, in case of all of these documents, there is one thing common, and that is their entire record is maintained by central authorities. And this fact highlights that these central authorities hold immense power, or rather, I should say, absolute power to issue, to verify, and to maintain a record of all of these documents. So if at any point in time, anyone has any dispute regarding any of these documents, that particular person is supposed to contact the central authority, which is maintaining the record of all of these documents, and get his or her disputes settled. So, in this entire scenario, it is the central authorities which have the mandate to decide whether a particular document is genuine or fake, whether the information with regard to the record keeping of all of these documents is correct or not, and whether there needs to be any update which should be made to the account of all of these documents. And it is said that sometimes power corrupts. And in fact, absolute power corrupts absolutely. We'll see what I mean. Let us in fact extend this concept of centralization now to the phenomena of keeping a record of knowledge. So now, like I said, centralization provides immense power to the apex controlling authorities to either edit or delete the records of information as per their will and wisdom. And this now may entail corruption. So for example, in case of a property sale deed, let's say if the officials at the state authority collude with people having malicious intentions, they might actually change the genuine records of the property and transfer it to a person who doesn't actually deserve it, who doesn't actually owns it, hasn't paid money for it. And very simply, if we need to understand the power which centralization provides to these apex decision-making authorities, recall that before the advent of internet, there used to be a collection of Britannica encyclopedia, and we used to have collections of such encyclopedia in the libraries, and this collection was supposed to be an authority of knowledge, because across a variety of subjects, across a variety of domains, Britannica encyclopedia was considered to be the Bible. Whatever was written in Britannica encyclopedia was assumed to be true without a doubt. But now, just think for a moment how much power this phenomena of centralization gives to the editors of Britannica encyclopedia. They can write whatever they want. They can manipulate facts according to their own convenience, and the general public cannot do anything about it, because ultimately this is the record, the final, the genuine record of all knowledge that is covered by the disciplines for which Britannia encyclopedia is published. But then with the internet came Wikipedia, and this was a classic example of decentralization of record keeping of knowledge and information, because it was publicly managed. Anyone can come on the internet, make an account on Wikipedia, and write a web page on a particular topic, and then it shall be vetted by experts, and this vetting shall happen not by a particular individual but collectively by multiple experts. And then even after the page gets published on Wikipedia, it can be edited by anyone else if he or she feels that the information therein is not correct. And for that, again, they will have to make a request to Wikipedia with the proof of why do they believe that the current information published on Wikipedia is wrong or incorrect, or rather incomplete. And then if a bunch of experts feel that editing needs to be made, then the Wikipedia page for that particular topic will be updated. So centralization of power may lead to corruption, whereas decentralization helps in preventing corruption, right? So decentralization actually lends power to the general community. And power to do what? Power to do the creation, the verification, and the updating of information, right? So now let's talk about blockchain. What does blockchain do? So, well, dear friends, blockchain is a way to implement decentralization. It is a manner in which you facilitate decentralization, and that too at a broader level, at a broader scale, because blockchain is a technology which needs internet to operate, and internet, as we all know, has already spread its wings across the globe. So which means decentralization of creation, verification, and updating of information can happen at a worldwide level. So when I say a blockchain, just think about a ledger which the companies usually maintain in order to keep an account of their suppliers and their customers. So they keep writing information in the ledger, and they keep updating it. So the difference is that in a ledger which is maintained by a company, the company has the ultimate authority to write whatever they want in those ledger accounts. But in blockchain technology, no specific person, no specific entity, or rather a group of persons or a group of entities also has a decisive power to update the information as part of the blockchain technology system. So the records of information are maintained in a digital format, but the power to add new records, to update the existing information, and also to verify that information is actually distributed among the participants in the blockchain technology system. Now, like I said, it is collectively managed by the participants in the system, and no single participant has a decisive control on the management of information. And that is why in blockchain technology, there is no need for any central authority for creation, verification, and updating of information. Information is governed by certain rules in blockchain technology, and these rules are same for everybody. So everyone is on an equal footing when it comes to adding information, to verifying information, or to update information in a blockchain technology setup. Moreover, in a blockchain technology system, the information which has been entered already cannot be tampered. It cannot be altered. Information once entered is entered forever. That cannot be changed. And in fact, addition of fresh information has to be validated by a majority of existing participants. Only then that particular piece of information will enter the existing blockchain. Now, blockchain technology uses cryptography, which is the art of secret communication, secret language. So blockchain technology uses cryptography in order to store information, which means the information is stored in an encrypted format. It cannot be read by people other than those for whom the information is intended. So it is not that any participant in a particular blockchain technology setup can read all the information, all the details of the transaction or the entries that have been made in a certain blockchain. It can only be read by people for whom that information is intended. Right. And in fact, in that process, it is also possible to keep the identities of the participants private. So in fact, participants can very well remain in the blockchain, and they can try to publish information, they can try to add a new information, they can try to verify the existing information, they can also try to update the information, the fresh information which gets added into a blockchain technology setup. But still, while doing all of this, their identities can very well remain private. And this is the power of blockchain technology. So in order to understand blockchain technology in more detail, we'll have to first understand, why is blockchain technology called blockchain technology? What do we mean by this term blockchain? So let's try and understand it. So in the context of blockchain, a block basically refers to a set of information, and chain refers to the thread which actually links a particular block with its preceding and succeeding block. So imagine that you have a book, and in this book you have certain content on every page, but all of these pages are connected to each other. Why? Because at the top of a particular page you have a summary of the previous page. So this particular page will have a summary of the content of this page, and this particular page will have a summary of the content of its own previous page. And in this way, each and every page is linked to each other. Because let's say this is page number 66. So page number 66 is linked to page number 65. Then page number 65 is linked to page number 64, so on and so forth. So in a way, we can say that in fact, page number 66 is also linked to page number 63 via its linkages with page number 65 and page number 64. And what happens is that in blockchain, all of these blocks of the blockchain, they represent certain information, and along with that information they have something called a hash. So now just imagine that these pages of the book are nothing but blocks of information. So now we are not calling them pages, we are just calling them blocks of information. So let's say this is the first block of a particular blockchain, and that is why it is called Genesis block. So this is block number 1, this is block number 2, and this is block number 3. So now what do these blocks contain? So what will happen is that, let's say block number 2 will contain certain information, certain unique information, and it will also contain its own unique hash. Now you can imagine hash to be just like a unique identifier for this particular block number 2. And you can in fact visualize this hash to be something like a fingerprint. So a fingerprint is unique to every individual. Similarly, a hash of a particular block is unique to that particular block. So that serves as the unique identifier of a particular block. So apart from storing its own hash, a particular block will also store the hash of the previous block. And for block number 2, the previous block is block number 1, and block number 1's hash was AA. So in this manner, block number 2 is now linked to block number 1. And what about block number 1? Block number 1 is the first block in the chain, in the blockchain, and that is why it doesn't have any previous hash whatsoever. It only has its own hash, and it is also known as the Genesis block. Right? And similarly, you will have block 3. Block 3 will have its own unique identifier called the hash, and also the hash of the previous block. Now what happens is that the information which is stored in each block is encrypted. So it is not available for the general public to read and access that information. And these hash components, they ensure that each block is linked to its previous block, and also it is linked to its succeeding block. Right? So for example, in block number 4, we'll also have something called the previous hash, and it will be CC, because that is the unique hash for block number 3. So now if someone tries to, let's say, tamper a particular piece of information in a given block, immediately what will happen is that the hash of that particular block will change, because hash is just like a unique identifier of the information which is stored in a particular block. So it is in a way storing the summarized version of the information in a format of a code, and this code is unique to that particular block. And if someone tries to edit the information in a particular block, what will happen is that its hash will change, because the underlying information to which this hash is linked is also changing. And once the hash of this particular block changes, the hash of all the forthcoming blocks, all the succeeding blocks will also change. And this will set up an alarm in the entire blockchain that a blockchain has been tampered with, and every participant in the blockchain system will get to know about it, right? So like I said, this is why the information in a particular blockchain is resistant to alteration. It is not so easy to alter information in a blockchain setup. And even if, let's say, someone is trying to do so, it will be immediately conveyed to the rest of the participants that a change is being trying to made in a particular block, because its hash has changed. And similarly, the hash of the succeeding blocks will also change, right? So everyone in the system will get to know about it, right? And like I said, the information in the blocks is encrypted. So it uses cryptography. The blockchain uses cryptography to store information, right? So not just the identity of the participants, but the information stored in a particular block of a blockchain can also be encrypted. So no one will come to know what information lies in a particular block. Only the users, for whom the that information is intended, only they will come to know about that information, right? So let's see now, how does a blockchain work? There are 6 essential elements for a blockchain to operate. Number 1, peer-to-peer network. So you must have multiple participants, and in this case, multiple computers, which are called nodes, right? So they should be linked to each other. All of these nodes, all of these computer systems should be linked to one another. And in fact, in today's times, it is very easy to link a computer to another computer through the internet. So all of these computers are linked through the internet. And then, like I said, blockchain makes use of cryptography. So information stored in a particular block is encrypted, right? And that is why if anyone tries to access that information, and if that person is not authorized to do so, this will set up an alarm. In fact, in order to access the information on a particular block, a person would actually require 2 things. One is the public key of the participant who is connected to that particular block, and the private key. So although public key may be actually available in the open domain, so you can actually think of public key to be just as your email ID, which is available with all your contacts. But private key, which you can visualize as being the password of your email account, that is something which is secret to you. That is something which is only you have access to. So that is why for any person to access the information in a particular blockchain, which is only meant for you, that person will then have to have your private key, right? So this is a password, which this particular person will have to hack in order to access that information. And even if, let's say, he gets that password and he tries to tamper with the information of a particular block, on an immediate basis, all the participants will get a message that a particular piece of information is being trying to altered, is being trying to be altered by a particular person, and everyone will become attentive instantly, and in fact they wouldn't then verify that piece of information to be genuine, and in this way this particular person won't be able to make any alterations to that pieces of information which are stored in a particular set of blocks in a blockchain. Now, like I said, for any fresh piece of information to be added in a blockchain, you need to have a consensus, and so for example, you must have a 51% majority. So 51% of the participants, the nodes which are part of that blockchain, should vet your information, should vet your block which you are trying to add. And if at all, let's say the majority is not achieved for that particular block to be added to the blockchain, then that block cannot be added to the blockchain. So which means that information is validated by the participants themselves, right? Then you need to also have a proof of work in a blockchain setup. So what do I mean by what do I mean by proof of work? So in proof of work, every piece of information which is being tried to be included in a particular blockchain, for that information to get added, there needs to be the solving of a particular mathematical puzzle. And these mathematical puzzles are very advanced, and you need supercomputers to solve those puzzles. And for every piece of info, for every block, for every new block to get added in the existing blockchain, this puzzle needs to be solved. This puzzle gets generated and it gets communicated to all the nodes of the blockchain setup, and then people try, the participants, these nodes, these active nodes, they try and solve that puzzle using the computer power and using energy in the form of electricity. They try and solve that puzzle, and in fact in doing so, what they are actually emanating is new rewards. So for example, in case of Bitcoin, which is based on blockchain technology, it would be new Bitcoins. So this proof of work is a setup which is designed to ensure the ongoing supply of the rewards for which the blockchain technology has been set up, right? So like for example, in case of Bitcoins, nodes actually compete, participants actually compete to solve that problem first, because whosoever solves that problem then communicates the solution to the remaining nodes, the remaining computers. And if those existing nodes accept that solution to be correct, it is only then that this node which has actually solved the mathematical puzzle gets to add a new block of information to the blockchain, and in return get a reward for it in terms of Bitcoins, right? So now in a blockchain technology setup, if there is reward for proof of work, there is also punishment for people who try to manipulate the blockchain setup. So if let us suppose there is a particular node which is trying to alter information in a particular blockchain, which let's say eventually doesn't get accepted, then this particular node shall also be punished. And probably, let's say in case of Bitcoin, the Bitcoins will be taken up, Bitcoins will be taken away from this particular node, from this particular computer system which is trying to manipulate which is trying to alter, which is trying to um, tamper the existing information in the blockchain, or maybe let's say this defaulter may actually be trying to circulate fake information for addition in the blockchain as well. So even in that case, this particular node shall be punished for it, right? So there shall be a penalty which is uh, applied on this particular node. And in case of Bitcoin, it could be some of the Bitcoins being taken away from this particular node. And finally, the last element, and perhaps the most important element of blockchain technology, is that a large number of participants should actively be a part of the blockchain. So, if let's say there are only 5 people, 10 people, operating a particular blockchain, it doesn't make much sense, because decentralization hasn't actually happened. So there are a handful of participants. So information is still centralized. And more so, if there are such low number of participants, the value of the reward will not be high, because there aren't many participants competing for that reward, right? And there is no acceptance for that reward in general among the masses. So you actually need market adoption at a critical mass level for a particular blockchain to get successful, to get popular, and to actually yield the benefits of decentralization, right? So blockchain may actually be created to serve different purposes, basis on the basis of the application that it is trying to serve. But these 6 elements, and in fact, market adoption is sometimes not considered the exact element of a particular blockchain. It is just a desirable attribute. So at least for a blockchain operating in any format, these 5 elements must be there. And then if the market adoption also happens, then it is likely that the blockchain will be able to serve its actual purpose of decentralization. Right. So now we'll be discussing about money, because in order to understand Bitcoin and its relevance, it is important for us to understand what money is, and how has money behaved since historical times. So money is any item or any verifiable record that is generally accepted as a payment, as a valid payment for goods and services, and also repayment of debt. And money actually, in general, to put it very simply, money actually represents value, which can be transferred from one entity to another entity. And in fact, there is another very interesting definition of money, which is money is what money does. So, let us have a look at the functions of money. So money acts as a medium of exchange. It acts as a unit of account, so which means every other commodity and service, any other commodity and service can be valued in terms of money. Then it acts as a store of value, which means it tends to remain valuable across time. It doesn't lose its value, right? And then it is used also as a standard of deferred payment. So if let's say I have taken a loan from someone in Indian rupees, Indian rupee is then the Indian rupee is then the instrument in which I shall be actually paying off this loan as well. And the person who has lent me the money actually believes that Indian rupees will go on to hold on to its value in the future as well. And that is why he or she has agreed to accept Indian rupees as repayment of that debt which they have given me today. So, in that sense, money serves as a standard of postponed payment, and the entire functioning of money, is actually based on unanimous trust. So, till the time we believe and we all of us agree that money has value, uh, till that time money will continue to have value. But if, let's say, there is a mass level of distrust among participants, that this uh, instrument of money doesn't hold value, then money will gradually lose its value and will stop performing all of these four functions in due course. So now if you look at the history, uh, there is a difference between money and fiat currency. So, money is something which actually performs all of these four functions across time without fail. And fiat currency, hasn't actually been able to perform all of these, four functions, especially to act as a store of value. So, fiat currencies haven't been able to act as a store of value across time. So, in fact, even if you look at stable economies, due to inflation, the value of fiat currency goes down, right? And in fact, then you also have cases of hyperinflation, so likes of Zimbabwe, likes of Venezuela, right? So there have been multiple instances in the past wherein the fiat currencies of countries have gone down to zero. They have lost all their value, and that is why fiat currency somehow in due course of time doesn't actually perform the function of acting as a store of value very very effectively, and that is why it becomes imperative for us to differentiate between money and fiat currency. So now let's have a look at gold. So gold has actually been found to perform all functions of money, and that is why it has been categorized as money in the true sense. So it has acted as a medium of exchange in the past. Even if today you have gold, you actually can convert it into a fiat currency, according to its price on that particular day. It has actually acted as a unit of account as well. So people have measured commodities, the value of commodities and services in terms of gold. And even if today, like I said, that if you convert your gold into fiat currency, so fiat currency can then go on to work as a unit of account for you. So in that sense, gold is actually facilitating the function of unit of account as well. It has actually been a store of value. So although there have been variations across time with regard to the value of gold, but still it has been the go-to asset in times of crisis for any economy. And then it has obviously served as a standard of postponed payment. So you can borrow money, let's say, and if you have gold, then you can keep that gold as a collateral. And the fact that this gold is being accepted as a collateral simply means that the lender of funds believes that gold will continue to hold value in the future. So it then acts as a standard of deferred payment as well, right? Now, talking about evolution of money, so initially commodities used to be exchanged in exchange of commodities, right? And this actually this system broke down because of double coincidence of bonds. So if someone wants rice, and the other person, let's say, has wheat to offer, then the transaction cannot go ahead. Then came the time when commodity or metals were used as money. So you actually had a time, when rice or let's say gold, silver, these things were used as money. But then again, there was a problem. With regard to gold, you had immobility. You could not carry gold, from one place to another easily. Then there was a problem of divisibility. So, for example, if I am buying just 1 kg of rice, so I cannot give an entire brick of gold in exchange for that, and it is difficult to then cut that gold break into pieces and decide, how much gold should be given up for a kg of rice, right? Then came the gold standard, in which the fiat currencies were issued and their value was actually linked to gold. So notes and coins came to the fore, and their values, their worth was actually linked to specific amount of gold, right? But then again, this had a problem. This system gold standard had a problem, and the problem was that since the fiat currency in the form of notes and coins was linked to gold, only that much worth of currency could be issued by a particular central bank as the amount of gold that it had at that point in time. So, even if let's say a particular central bank wanted to pursue an expansionary monetary policy by printing more currency, it could not do so because it had a limited amount of gold. So in that way, the supply of fiat currency was also limited. Then came the Bretton Woods system, in which actually every currency's value was pegged to US dollar, and in turn the US dollar's value was pegged to gold. And in fact, US as a country gave a guarantee that if at all US dollars are returned to US, they would actually offer an equivalent worth of gold to anyone who is surrendering US dollars to them. But then in 1971, US actually abandoned, the Bretton Woods system, this new gold standard as well. And then came the advent of fiat currency, which were completely managed by central banks. They served as a legal tender, and central banks now did not, have any linkages between the amount of currency notes or currency coins that they have issued and the amount of gold that they have. So this linkage between gold and currency, fiat currency, was completely broken, and the central banks actually now guaranteed the value of the currency issued themselves. And that is why on every note you see a statement: I promise to pay the bearer of this note a worth of 100 rupees, and then there is a sign of the central bank governor underneath this statement. So central banks in a way are now guaranteeing the worth of the currency that they are issuing, and this entire system is working purely on the basis of trust. Everyone believes that this particular piece of paper has the value which is written on it, and it will continue to serve as a medium of exchange. It will continue to have purchasing power in the future as well. Now, what are the credentials of money? So what are the attributes, what are the desirable attributes which money should have in order to remain relevant across time? So one is that money should be scarce, so there should be a limited supply. It should be divisible, it should be breakable into smaller denominations. It should be fungible, which means it should be perfectly substitutable. So let's say a particular 100 rupee note is perfectly substitutable with another 100 rupee note. There is no difference between the two. Both the notes have the same value. Then there should be transportability, that it should be easy to transfer or to transport this money. Then it should be durable, so it should be safe, and it should have longevity. So in today's times, you have digital money, so your bank accounts show the amounts that you have. So those amounts, they are durable in the sense that they cannot be destroyed until and unless the authorities which are managing them decide to do so. And then money should also be non-counterfeitable, so which means that the imitation should not be possible. Okay, duplication must not be possible. Now if we look at fiat currencies, out of all of these attributes, they tend to have all of the attributes. They do have all of these desirable qualities, all of these desirable credentials, apart from the fact that they are not scarce, because central banks can go on and print as many notes as they want, and that is why they can keep on increasing the money supply, and this will erode the value of fiat currency in terms of their purchasing power. So this is a major drawback of fiat currency, as an instrument of money. So what are the now other issues that we tend to face with the fiat currencies serving as money? Number one is possibility of hyperinflation. So like I said, central banks have the full authority to print as much money as they want, as much currency as they want, and in that process they are actually lowering down the value of these currency notes. Their purchasing power is going down. So you have cases like Zimbabwe and Venezuela, like I mentioned earlier, and then it can actually lead to economic collapse and trust deficit, which has actually happened in both of these countries due to the fact that the central banks of these countries continued to print more and more notes, right? And then you have scams and financial collapses linked to the system in which we operate currently. So you had the global financial crisis of 2008-9, and there was a clear-cut case of uh, fraud, which was committed by the financial institutions who issued mortgage-backed securities along with the credit rating agencies, which gave them a very high credit rating. So they colluded in order to cause a ruckus in the entire financial system worldwide. Then you also have financial scams, which keep on happening on a regular basis almost, especially in developing developing countries like India. So you had recently the Punjab National Bank scam, then the Yes Bank scam, PMC Bank, Lakshmi Vilas. So in all of these scams, usually the depositor suffers, because it is the depositor's money which is then looted, and the depositor has almost no options left with him in order to get back his funds. And then you have ever increasing NPAs in the banks. So you have then people like Vijay Mallya and Nirav Modi who borrow crores of rupees from banks put together, and then they run away. So ultimately it is the taxpayers money which is used potentially to bail out the banks, right? Then you have taxes and regulations in the current system of fiat currencies. So every source of income is tracked by the income tax department, by the central authorities, and you are supposed to pay taxes on every source of income. Then you have certain investment restrictions as well. So for example, back in April 2018, RBI actually had put a blanket ban on the fund transfers into cryptocurrency wallets from the banking system put together. So they gave a clear-cut direction to all the banks operating in India that they must cut their ties with all cryptocurrency platforms in India. So and in that process they actually prohibited Indians from buying cryptocurrencies using those platforms, right? They could not transfer their money from their bank accounts to these cryptocurrency platforms, their e-wallets, right? Then there is another issue of absolute power and monitoring. So for example, in demonetization, the government actually slashed the value of high denomination currency notes to zero just with an announcement. So all of those currency notes, they become worthless. They actually became worthless, and in a way, almost 86% of the currency in circulation was wiped out from the system in one go, right? And there is a debate whether demonetization was wrong or whether it was right, whether it should have been done or not. But the point is that demonetization is a clear-cut example of the magnitude of power which the central authorities have with regard to the fiat currencies that they issue. Then there is a lot of micro monitoring. So for example, post demonetization, the bank accounts were being tracked by the income tax department, and any huge sums of cash which were deposited in those bank accounts, people were served notices for that. So again, the information is centralized. So the government, in collaboration with its different authorities, different organizations, can actually micro monitor every individual, which falls within the system. And then there is also a debate regarding public expenditure and bailouts. So, for example, taxpayers' money is spent by the government on a variety of issues. Whether it be defense, education, healthcare, social reforms, etc., etc. So, it is always a matter of contention as to how much money should be spent on which particular sector. So, someone would argue that healthcare and education need, more expenditure. Someone would argue that defense needs more expenditure. So, it is again within the ambit of the government itself to decide how much money to spend on what particular sector, right? So, and then the government also may decide to bail out institutions which they believe are too big to fail, and their failure may actually make a dent on the entire financial system. So then again taxpayers money may be used by governments to bail out such institutions, which is something which again happened in the US just after the global financial crisis, when Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, these were banks which were bailed out by the government using taxpayers' money, right? And now, if I talk about the main the main downside of fiat currencies, which is the ever increasing money supply. This is a real life example for the same. So have a look at the balance sheet of RBI as on June 30, 2014. So you have notes in circulation here worth 13.44 lakh crores, right? And now let's come to 2021. This figure has now increased to 28.27 lakh crores. So which means you can see that within a span of almost 7 years, the currency in circulation has more than doubled, right? And this actually means that on an annual basis, the currency in circulation has increased at a rate of 11.2%. So 11.2% is the CAGR at which the currency in circulation in India has increased, and RBI itself is publishing that data. So you can now very well think that if the currency in circulation is increasing at an annual rate of 11.2%, is your income increasing at that rate or not? Because if your income is not increasing at that rate, you can very well visualize that the supply of money is increasing in the economy at a higher pace as compared to the speed at which your own salary or income is increasing, which means that inflation is causing a huge dent to your purchasing power. Because if all of the currency notes in circulation, they are supposed to chase the available goods and services in the economy. So now if let's say the currency in circulation is increasing at a annual rate of 11.2%, by extending this logic to the price of goods and services, you can say that keeping everything else as constant, the price of goods and services may also actually rise at 11.2%. Okay, may actually rise, because if that particular currency is put to expenditure by all the economic entities in the economy. But even if let's say that is not done, you can still make out that since there is a huge gap between your salary hike, your income hike on an annual level, on an annual basis, and this annual hike in currency in circulation of 11.2%. So broadly, the purchasing power of the funds that you have is going down with time, right? Okay, so now still apart despite of these deficiencies in the current economic system, why do we still need central banks and financial institutions? Well, the answer is, first of all, to enforce trust, because we as individuals do not trust each other we trust central banks, we trust financial institutions. So for example, if I were to let's say buy a car, by let's say taking a loan, then the loan provider may actually ask for my bank details, my let's say salary statement, and the let's say assets which I own, the amount of money that I have currently. So all of these details are actually held with the banks in which I have my account. And this loan provider, this loan providing agency will not actually trust me in this case regarding the worth of assets that I have. They will trust someone else. So they will trust the banks with regard to the amount of funds that I have lying in my bank account. So to that extent, we actually need the financial institutions and central banks to enforce trust. And if I let's say talk about the currency notes, currency notes actually tend to have value because central bank has actually guaranteed the fact that they have value. Okay, so that is why we need central banks, we need financial institutions to enforce trust in the economic system. And the second reason for which we need the central banks is to prohibit double spending, right? So now, what do I mean by double spending? So let's say if I have 100 rupees currently in my bank account, okay, and if let's say I spend 50 rupees out of these out of this amount of 100 rupees, then what happens is that my balance, outstanding balance in the bank goes down to 50. So now this bank will ensure that I cannot spend an amount more than 50 rupees now, because I only have a balance of 50 rupees left in my bank account. So this bank will now ensure that I cannot spend an amount which is let's say 200 from my bank account, because I only have 50 rupees. So in a way, what is happening here is that the banks are ensuring that funds are not spent more than once. Okay, so they are maintaining a record of the same, and they are ensuring that the entire series of transactions and the closing balance after all those transactions is calculated accurately, a record of that is maintained, and it is shared with the bank account holder. Okay, so in that sense we can say that central banks and the financial institutions put together help us to prohibit double spending, which is again required for efficient functioning of the financial system, right? But having said that, we need to always remember that the entire economic system, which is currently operating on fiat currencies, it is actually based on trust. The moment the trust we have on the value, on the worth of the fiat currency, which we use as a medium of exchange, once that trust breaks, the entire financial system will collapse in one shot. And now let us talk about Bitcoin. We have understood what is money. So now let us talk about Bitcoin and how does it offer an alternative to fiat currencies. So when did it all start? It all started with this research paper, which was posted to a cryptography mailing list by someone called Satoshi Nakamoto. We do not know whether this is a person, whether this is a group of persons, or this is an organization or a group of organizations. So the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto is still a secret. So he published in 2008, just after the global financial crisis, he published this paper called Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And he said that he is introducing to the world a system for electronic transactions without relying on trust. So which means he said that there is no need for any central authority to enforce trust if is his Bitcoin is used as a currency. And in fact, the first Bitcoin transaction was made in January 2009, and the first trade of Bitcoin for a fiat currency happened in October 2009 for USD. Right. So what is Bitcoin? Now, Bitcoin is a decentralized currency. And if you look at it from the perspective of making investments, then you can also call it as a digital asset, which is designed to work as a medium of exchange that uses cryptography, right? The art of secret language, the art of secret communication to control its creation and management rather than relying on central authority. So it is completely decentralized. It is, its creation, its management, its updation, everything is managed by the participants on the blockchain technology setup on which Bitcoin operates, and there is no single authority which can actually issue or which can verify transactions for Bitcoin in that blockchain technology setup. So Bitcoin is actually a result of four disciplines, the knowledge and understanding of four disciplines put together. One is cryptography, second is computer science because it involves a lot of coding. Then you have mathematics, and then you have economics. So as of now, as of September 2021, Bitcoin actually comprises more than 65% of the total market capitalization of all cryptocurrencies put together. And Bitcoins can be stored on an exchange or, as part of e-wallets of the participants, or they can also be stored on storage devices like hard disk or USB drives. So because blockchain, facilitates that, Bitcoins are stored in a digital format. So you can, actually visualize Bitcoins to be a series of codes, encrypted data, and that all data can very well be stored, in a hard disk or a USB drive as well. Right. So Bitcoin makes use of blockchain technology for its creation, verification of transactions, and as well as updating ledger accounts of all the participants as to who owns how much of Bitcoin. And the process by which Bitcoins are created is called mining, and it consumes a lot of energy. So we will see how Bitcoins are created and how the Bitcoins work. Right. So some more discussion on the definition and description of Bitcoin. So like I said, Bitcoin operates on blockchain technology, right? And it makes the entire system transparent. Why? Because all of these transactions are available publicly. The record is available publicly. So in fact, there is a website called BlockChain. And on that website, you can go and in fact for yourself see live transactions of Bitcoin happening in real-time basis. Okay, so all of these records of transactions, past transactions, are made available to each and every participant. A copy of these records is available with all the participants, and then it is affordable because the transfer of Bitcoins from one wallet, from one entity to another, takes very nominal charges. So for example, if you are trying to send Bitcoins from your wallet to someone else's wallet, the exchange on which you have your account will charge a very nominal fee from you to make those transfers, right? Then they are reliable because these transactions are verified by the participants on the network itself, so no fake or no invalid transactions can go ahead. Then this entire system of Bitcoin transfers is very efficient. Why? Because transfers can be made around the clock, so you don't have to actually wait for the e-banking timings to open. The entire Bitcoin system is based on blockchain technology, which works on the internet, and you can make transfers 24/7 and regardless of geographical barriers. So despite, let's say, the sanctions which US has placed on several countries, those sanctions do not apply to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin can be transferred from any country to another country, right? Then the transactions, like I said, the identity of participants is not disclosed, so transactions always remain anonymous. And then the entire system is decentralized because you do not need any centralized authority to keep a record of all the transactions, and also of the fact that how much Bitcoins are owned by whom. All of this happens as part of the blockchain technology because new pieces of information, that is blocks, are added once fresh transactions take place in a blockchain setup, right? But what are the limitations of Bitcoin now? The first Bitcoin is the first limitation of Bitcoin is that the transactions are irreversible. So if some funds have been transferred from one Bitcoin wallet to another Bitcoin wallet, these are irreversible. Then the anonymity of transactions can actually be used to carry out illegal activities. So for example, initially when Bitcoin was being used as a medium of exchange, it was being primarily used for all sorts of illegal activities on the dark web, whether it could be funding terrorism, drug trafficking, money laundering. So all of these illegal activities were being carried out using Bitcoin on the dark web, right? Then processing time. So usually for a transaction to go through and for a block to get added in the existing blockchain, it takes about 10 minutes. And although let's say if you were to transfer your funds from one country to another, usually the current banking system takes about 1 to 2 days to make that international transfer. Okay, but so comparing that duration of time which international transfers take as of now, comparing that time to 10 minutes, obviously 10 minutes is much lower. So in that regard, 10 minutes is actually advantageous. It is a shorter period of time, shorter duration to make international transfers. But let's say for your day-to-day payments, okay, if you were to make payments at a grocery store or at a coffee shop or at a restaurant, you won't actually wait for 10 minutes for that transaction to go ahead. And also let me tell you that this number of 10 minutes has been calculated on an average. Okay, on an average, the processing time for each transaction to go through completely is 10 minutes. But there are times, when this could actually take hours as well. Okay, so that is why, for use as a medium of exchange on a regular basis, Bitcoin may not be that suitable. Okay, then energy consumption. Now, like I told you, every time a block, has to be added on the blockchain, there needs to be some work done. And what work? There needs to be a mathematical puzzle that is to be solved by a particular participating computer, and this computer will obviously get bitcoins as a reward for solving that puzzle. But now these puzzles are so complex that they have to be solved by computers which have very high configuration, very high processing power. And in fact, there are mining farms. You have sets of hundreds and thousands of such computers which are operating collectively to solve these mathematical puzzles for each new block of transactions to get added in the current blockchain. So the mining power of the computers actually consumes a lot of energy, a lot of electricity. And that is why, from an energy perspective, Bitcoin is not appropriate. In fact, as of now, Bitcoin is Bitcoin, across the world, all the mining farms put together, they are estimated to be using the same amount of energy as Netherlands. Okay, so you can assume, Bitcoin mining farms to be consuming energy, just like an entire country. Okay, and these are the limitations because of which Bitcoin is still being majorly used as an investment rather than as a medium of exchange. So its adoption as a currency has still not happened. It is still being majorly used as an investment alternative by the participants, because people believe that the Bitcoin will appreciate in future as well. So that is why they try and buy Bitcoin today. They try and buy Bitcoin today, hoping that its value gets appreciated in the future, and they can sell off that holding of Bitcoin and earn a return. Okay, and this is why, since it is being used as an investment, and people believe that it will continue to behave as a store of value. It will continue to act as a store of value. Sometimes also people refer Bitcoin as digital gold, because digital gold also, gold also per se, we discussed that it has a store of value, and people do believe that it will continue to hold value in the future as well, and that is why people invest in gold. Right. So how does a Bitcoin network work? So what happens is that let's say Phil initiates a transaction through his wallet, and he has the private key, which is the password of his wallet. So he initiates a transaction by entering that password, and let's say he sends 2 Bitcoins to Jack. Okay. So what will happen is that his transaction, before going further, it will pass through a hashing encryption algorithm, in which all of this information pertaining to the identity of Phil, which it will be encrypted. So no one will come to know who is Phil, because only his wallet address will appear in the form of a long code. And since Phil has his own private key, he has entered that. So what will happen is that this now a transaction will be provided a unique identifier in the form of a hash, or you can say a code. This unique code will be provided, will be applied to this transaction, and then it will go to the general network of all the nodes across the globe, and everyone will be notified that someone with a particular wallet address wants to transfer some Bitcoins to a person with another wallet address, and then people will try and solve mathematical puzzle so that this transaction goes ahead. And once that mathematical puzzle is solved, then what will happen is that people will now actually use their computers on which they are operating in order to verify this transaction. And what do I mean by verify this transaction? They will ensure that whether Phil actually has the amount of Bitcoins, the number of Bitcoins that he's trying to transfer to Jack or not. So again, this validation, this verification will happen. And once this transaction is validated, this transaction is verified by the majority of participating nodes, only then the funds will be transferred to Jack. And what will happen is that Jack will receive these Bitcoins when once he enters his own password in order to log into his wallet. And since his password is private to him, only he can know his password. So he will actually then receive these Bitcoins. And in fact also the identity of Phil will then actually be decrypted, so that Jack comes to know that this these 2 Bitcoins are coming actually from Phil. Okay. So here the encryption happens, and here again the decryption happens. Right. So this is the manner in which Bitcoin operates. Right. And like I told you, Bitcoin transactions can be viewed publicly on this website called BlockChain. You can go and visit that website. However, identity of participants remains secret, and only an account of Bitcoin transfer is visible in the public domain, that this particular amount of Bitcoin has been transferred from one wallet to another. And in fact, the wallet address is nothing but a long code, and no one knows that who actually owns that wallet. So now, what is the legal status of Bitcoin across the globe currently? So now, regarding legal status of Bitcoin, what we can do is we can actually divide it into 2 forms. Okay. One is the legal status of Bitcoin as an instrument of trading or investment, and another is the legal status of Bitcoin as fiat tender, fiat currency. Okay. So now there are a lot of countries across the globe which have actually allowed trading and investment in Bitcoin, although then there are some countries as well which have completely banned any sort of Bitcoin transactions within their geographical boundaries, right? And as far as the legal tender status is concerned, there is only one country, that is El Salvador, which actually accepted Bitcoin, as a legal tender on September 7, 2021. And in fact, this graph which you see, color codes the legal status of Bitcoin across the globe, right? So you can see that the green area refers to countries in which it is permitted to use Bitcoin. The yellow area is the one in which Bitcoin can be used, but with some restrictions. And then red area is the area of countries in which Bitcoin is completely banned. Okay, for investment purposes as well as a um, potential tender of money, right? And now we shift our focus to cryptocurrencies. So, Bitcoin indeed is a cryptocurrency, and rather it was the first cryptocurrency to be introduced to the world. And since then, there has been a flurry of cryptocurrencies which have been introduced. And all of these, cryptocurrencies are based on blockchain technology, and they serve different purposes. So, for example, they, have some advantages over Bitcoin. So, for example, if I talk about Ripple, its processing time for the transactions is much lower as compared to Bitcoin. Which is the processing time for transactions on Ripple network is a few seconds, right? Then you have very famous cryptocurrency called Ethereum, which is being used in order to facilitate digital contracts among parties, right? So these contracts may be related to property, they may be related to exchange of financial assets, so on and so forth, right? So all of these cryptocurrencies have different applications, and as of now there are more than 4,000 cryptocurrencies or tokens in circulation, and they are all based on the internet and blockchain technology, and they have different applications and different features. Right. So now let us have a look at some recent trends and developments with regard to blockchain technology. Number one, regulation of cryptos is in full swing now. Countries, are taking steps to regulate Bitcoin. Earlier, they were dormant, but now they have started taking up steps in order to bring, Bitcoin transactions within the legal ambit. And in fact, so for example, in India, if you earn some profit on account of Bitcoin trading, Bitcoin investment, then you are supposed to pay taxes on it, because this income will form part of sources of income from other sources. So regulation of cryptos is in motion. Then now a very interesting concept is coming to the fore in the form of central bank digital currencies. So now, in fact, central banks are planning to float their own digital currencies and use them as a medium of exchange within their geographical boundaries. Then, trading volumes are, rising continuously for some of the popular cryptocurrencies. So, which means now people are becoming more and more aware of, these cryptocurrencies, and they are using them as investment alternatives. And again, there is also rising awareness, of how blockchain technology works. What do cryptocurrencies entail for us in the future? How much value will they continue to demand in the future? So in finance, people are using them for the purposes of portfolio diversification. So awareness and research on blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies is also rising with time. And finally, to conclude, what are the major takeaways we can have from this session? It would be rather incorrect to discard cryptocurrencies altogether, because the manner in which they are being adopted and they are being regulated in today's world, it seems that cryptocurrencies may exist along with fiat currencies in the future. And another takeaway for us is that digitization of money is in progress, and most likely the hard form of cash, the currency notes and the coins that we see, they will go away, and all money shall be held in digital form in the economy. Then there is another concept of programmable money. So China is experimenting with something called a digital yuan, and they are trying to program money in the sense that uh, 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 a particular yuan can only be used for a particular purpose and nothing else. So now in this case, yuan we will have a code, and this code will actually work when this yuan is used for a particular purpose only, right? So in that sense, countries may actually um, put restrictions on the manner in which people spend their money. Okay, and this may actually be very useful in case of direct benefit transfers of social service schemes by governments to their target citizens, right? Then blockchain has immense potential. Like Eric Schmidt said, that the ability to create something which is not duplicable in the digital world has enormous value, and absolutely it does. So in fact, in education, it can have a lot of applications. So for example, people might have their educational degrees and certificate, being issued using blockchain technology. Then in case of real estate, property transfers, land transfers may happen using blockchain technology. Then in healthcare system as well, the records, the details of the patients, their illness history may be maintained using blockchain technology. And finally, the broader takeaway for all of us is that we are moving towards a decentralized world. Okay, so there is a movement which is taking us away from centralization towards decentralization, right? Which means that people will have collectively a control over what happens within the system, right? So taking power from a few hands and distributing it among the larger community. Okay, so this is all from my side for this session. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this session and you learned something. I really hope to see you in the future as well with more such sessions. So till then, take care and have a great life ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you so